Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome back. Um, so we don't have much time left, but maybe this talk is coming a little too late, but getting like very concerned about some performances. There's been majority of people have done well and are probably on their way to an A and that sort of thing, which is great. But I've had a few people at least who have kind of almost disappeared or had some issues. I realize that some of those issues are beyond our control, or some people have been dealing with some medical issues and that sort of thing. So, please just communicate with me if you could, if you're able to, and just let me know that you need to like more time or whatever. But I've had people just basically almost just like disappear. So, and that concerns me because it concerns me that maybe there's something wrong with the person. That's the very first concern you would have. Um, so and I have to admit, I am also concerned that people aren't really watching the videos or doing the readings, because as I was grading the student tuition reaction story, again, for lack of a better term, um, there was this really real lack of connection there for some people, and you know, and of course with the megalomania assignment there was even more of a lack of connection. That one I feel like is probably actually I believe the megalomania one is easier to treat than the student tuition one, because the student tuition one kind of showed me that people there's people who aren't really keeping up. um and I'll show you exactly why. Some of the things I probably needed to emphasize more, and I didn't emphasize enough. And that again is that what we're dealing with here in news writing. I'm trying to get the split screen right now. Give me a second. Um, is an upside down story. Okay, upside down from what you're typically used to. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, well, first of all, there's no such thing as a conclusion in a news story. Okay, and you think about it, what does a conclusion do? Well, in summary, blah blah blah, and you usually make some sort of comment or opinion, that sort of thing. See, that's what a conclusion does. And so that's one way it violates the journalism code, for lack of a better term, is that it usually yields some sort of an opinion, which a news story, your opinion has no place in a news story. Okay. It has absolutely no place, right? Um, I was looking at this one right here. This is the bottom of the megalomania story. Okay. As the media giant moves forward on new leadership, industry observers and students alike watch closely to see if this shakeup changes the community's corporate culture or content strategy. I mean, I know this. I know what we made up the story and everything. Okay, and it is based on an actual happening, which I talked about, and I even gave you guys the video in my last video. I gave you guys a video of the actual Marv Bronson in my last video, but it does, just because we made up a story doesn't mean you have to make up stuff too. Okay. Um, Industry observers and students alike. Well, how do we know that? This incident serves as a real world case study to Rutgers students in business, ethics, and media studies, prompting the discussions of corporate responsibility and the role. So that is basically crossing the line into opinion. Okay. And we're not concluding here. Okay. Your very first graph of the story is your conclusion. I've said that before. The lead is the conclusion. Okay. Most people only read the first paragraph of the story, and you can see there's some problems with this one right here. Um, so there were like there was a number of stories that had this at the bottom. It had it in the student tuition increase stories. I mean, it was really like I would actually I would have a halfway decent story going, maybe that could be correctable, and then something I'd see at the bottom, something that would resemble some sort of a conclusion. There are no conclusions, as I see or my notes right here. No conclusions in the news story. Okay, let me just say that again. There are no conclusions in a news story. Okay, I'm sorry to get that way, but I just have to. Okay. All right, let me just call up what I got here. All right, a news story, like I said before, just typically kind of ends. All right. You basically usually have some sort of a transition. And as I tried to explain in my last videos, not every type of story has an anecdote. The type of story, the student tuition story, and then this feature assignment that's due on Monday, which again, this I'm recording this over the weekend. Um, those have anecdotes because you could dig a little bit deeper. So then maybe you have a transition, an anecdote, but in the megalomania story, it's pretty much just all transitions. Okay. But anyway, you have a transition anecdote. A lot of times you just end with a quote, or you just end. Okay. Um, if we look at this this story right here, megalomania known for its reality shows, celebrity gossip, and sitcoms has faced criticism for its lowbrow. Okay. Well, the company defends its approach. Okay. I mean, that was kind of making up things too. I mean, we don't know if they've actually faced criticism, but something like Bronson owns 20% of his company's stock. So it's like that might be like the least important detail in the story. Okay. So that means that means the story just ends with that. Okay. And the reason is again, is because most people don't get down to the bottom. Okay. They read the first paragraph, and if they're interested enough, they keep going. Now, this feature story we're doing, that is a story that's targeted for people who read from top to bottom. That's not every news reader. It's maybe not even the majority of news readers, okay? But that one is targeted to do that, okay? But again, it's not, you're not supposed to have some sort of conclusion at the end. You just basically dwindle out. And what you usually do is you have some sort of a quote, what they call a walk-off quote. Just end it with a quote, because a quote usually is maybe the least important thing in a story, a direct quote. So you just end the story that way, okay? Um, Another issue I've had was like people following directions. I've had some interesting takes on like these assignments. I mean, this one right here, again, I'm going to use this as an example. Um, that I was just showing you right here. Okay. But anyway, let's just go to the directions. Okay. Of course, this is the rewrite, which is again, the rewrite is due on Thursday. So you have plenty of time to do this rewrite. Okay. So the assignment is rewriting a press release and turning into a story. After reading the press release and determining the focus, please contact Bill Borden, which almost everybody did. Or got back from him. And then I have a separate video, which I showed in my other video. Okay, so you've seen this several times now. As I talk about in the video, the first paragraph isn't the lead. So this one, at least 5, 6, 7 people didn't listen to this, okay, or whatever. I hate to put it that way. But or maybe you had like I could see this, like I would see something like Megalomania has decided to restructure after Bronson, blah blah blah. Okay, you're still making about the restructuring, even though you may be minimizing it a bit in the lead, but it's still there. It's not the lead of the story. Okay, nobody cares. Nobody cares about the restructuring. That's the whole reason for why we're doing this. Okay, is that you get an understanding of like what matters to people. Okay, and you have to use basically you have to be like your own manager. They call them self managers again, where you have to actually manage and determine, what your story is going to be focused on. And actually, this has become a lot more important nowadays. And I realize maybe all or most of you are probably not going to go into journalism. I don't know, but this is actually like how a lot of things are being written nowadays. Is basically, especially when you do a presentation in an office somewhere or whatever, you want to be able to get the good stuff out first. Okay, and social media also works that way too. So if you want to go into social media, okay, that's another thing is you have to learn how to actually craft social media posts. And you want to get the most important information out first. Okay. Um, and this is another reason why I showed the Ahmaud Arbery case, which I showed at the end of a video several videos ago, where initially it came out as some police report basically saying, oh, there was a witness and this man was shot, blah, blah. They thought he was a burglar suspect. When it turned out that, like, after some digging and after some checking, it was a lot more than that. It was actually a man was murdered. Okay. Um, and I mean, that was several videos ago. I don't remember which one it was, but you really should like check into that case and see that as an example. There's been so many cases over the last 10 years or so, or longer, where thanks to the iPhone and smartphones and everything that we're been able to find out the real story behind what the police have told us. Okay. Um, here it's a similar situation. You're given a press release and you're given some information, and what they want you to do is to spin it in their direction so it makes it look like Megalomania is on top of things. Okay. But maybe Megalomania knew about what was going on. He just sat on it. Okay. Maybe there was usually a lot of times these things happen because there's a leak. So when they, and a lot of times the company will know that the leak is coming. So they try to get out ahead of the story. Okay. Knowing that they let it go for months or something like that. Okay. So that's what you're supposed to do here is you're supposed to identify, you're supposed to basically have the lead, Bronson, Quentin, Y. Okay. All right. And then once you find the lead, you find Bill Borden, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then, it's one of you did actually reach out to me and ask for the voucher and the Q&A, which he sent out because you weren't able to get it in time. That's fine. If that happened, then I'll help you out. Okay. It's still not too late for that too. I can send that out if you want. Okay. But those expenses are important because they make the story rise above a typical resignation story like I showed you before. Okay. And you have to contact Bill for this assignment, obviously. And he sends you a document that will provide crucial and vital information for the assignment. And I did say that, which I don't know why people got the voucher and then left out pretty much everything from the voucher. Okay. Um, I mean, I don't, maybe you didn't get the voucher. I don't know. Maybe more people didn't get the voucher than I thought. Okay. But, this is actually what you need to do is get this information. Now, going back to this other story I was going to show you. So it's not, so it's very basic instructions there. Okay. Basically, you want to find out what happened and why, right? Well, I had cases like this where I was a little bit stunned, okay, where people drew inferences that I don't know where they came from, but this particular student right here, I'm sorry to come down on the student a bit, but decided to turn this into a Rutgers reaction story. Maybe you were thinking that because we did a Rutgers reaction story, um, you know, we're doing one again. Well, I know this is like an old person saying, but let me just get back to my board here. Okay. But that's called assuming. Okay. You should never assume. Okay. Have you heard about assuming? That's the word, right? See how it can be divided up? This is what it could turn you make us look like, okay, if you assume. Okay. All right. So you never, and I'm talking about really, I mean, it doesn't really matter in this class right here. That's not happening in this class right here necessarily. But if you were out on the job and you just assume that this was the assignment, that you're not only just to get the megalomania stuff, but turn it into a Rutgers reaction story, your boss might fire you. Okay. That is basically totally misunderstanding the directions. Okay. Rutgers students express mixed reactions, and not only that, it's made up. Or, well, I mean, not necessarily made up, but we have a made up thing that's happening here, and you're having people react to a made up thing. Okay. I mean, this is supposed to be an assignment, and you're supposed to treat it like it's a real thing, but you're not supposed to like extend the fallacy by having Rutgers students react to a made up thing. Okay. Maybe that's what you did. I don't know. Sarah Johnson, a sophomore majoring in business ethics, find it troubling. Okay, well, that's nice. And it also has nothing to do with megalomania. I mean, this company, why would we go to interview Rutgers students about megalomania? You know, think about that. Why would we even do that? Why would Rutgers students care? Why would, I mean, unless megalomania was part of the Rutgers campus, there's no connection there at all, you know? Unless it was some company that really had touched everybody like Disney or something like that, which I mean, we're portraying this company as a very big company, but no one's as big as Disney. Okay. So maybe then we would have maybe think of maybe a Rutgers reaction story because Disney affects everything, literally everything. Okay. And they own ESPN, they own ABC, everything. Okay. You grew up on their cartoons or whatever, their movies. movies like Finding Nemo, movies like Up, that sort of thing. Um, Inside Out, et cetera, et cetera. But the main thing is though, is I never said anything about Ruckerson's expressing getting reactions from Ruckerson's about this. All I wanted was basically this. Okay. And then, I mean, what this person did, so many people did not do this. Okay. Now this is actually incorrectly done. You can write this in a paragraph form like this. The expenses included. It is much easier to read like this. There was no reason to put this um into bullet form, okay? Maybe have like a couple paragraphs into it, okay? Another thing also is that like even if you did have some of the expenses, you didn't really have enough. I had people who maybe a lot of people wrote like about the plane and the cake, and that was it. And I mean, how many times have you heard about CEOs throwing lavish parties? Rich people do that, by the way, okay? And they have their own planes, and they do things like hire Jimmy Buffett and Celine Dion, and Jimmy Buffett's gone. But I'm just saying, if you actually watch this videotape that I told you about the other day, the real life Mark Bronson, he hired Jimmy Buffett for his party. Okay. So that's what people do. But then we get into other stuff that actually could probably get him into jail. Okay. And for the life of me, I don't know why you wouldn't include certain things. Okay. The statue, all that stuff. Okay. I mean, it's almost perverted in a lot of ways. It's disgusting. Okay. Um, so I mean, at least this person actually had the expenses, but it's focused in like and that's what I say, like when it's not when it gets like lower than a C, like even a C plus or something, it's like when I say that, it's like I fail to understand. I mean, I fail to understand the point of the story is what I really mean. Okay. And I fail to understand the point of the story is that Rutgers students expressed mixed reactions to this. The assignment was to write about what was the most interesting thing in the story and why did it happen, and you go into more detail about why it happened. Okay. Which and those details, the expense voucher, are what really makes this story much bigger than it was. Okay. Now look, I know that this class goes fast. I actually had one student, and I'm not trying to blame this person. I had one student that thought this class goes to August. So that's another thing too, is you got to make sure you're really paying attention to the instructions here. This class goes to actually I think I should cut a couple days short. It goes to July 5th. Okay. There's actually two semesters, for lack of a better term, in the summertime period. We have the first chunk. Okay. So I don't know if you guys were thinking that this was going to be a class that was going to go the whole summer. It's not. It ends next week. Okay. The end of next week. I'll probably have your grades back to you in 2 weeks. Your final grades. Yeah. Okay. So hello, if you didn't know that, man, you better read up. You better read up on what you signed up for. And you got to know what you signed up for. Okay. You signed up for a summer class, and I know you probably a lot of you had to catch up. I had to do summer classes myself. Okay. I had to play catch up. It sucked. Okay. It absolutely sucked. And you know what? I wish that class was online. I tell you what, because I had to like drive my ass up to New Brunswick from Point Pleasant every freaking Friday. I was half in the bag. I mean, just tired, basically, whatever. I had a serious relationship with a woman and everything at the time. And I would like crawl out of like her house and go to that class. And then that class was awful. It was like the worst class ever. It was terrible. It was called an internship seminar. And it was basically a class in teaching you how to research. And it sucked because back then they actually had journalism majors actually do thesis. I don't know if they still do or not, but and they actually, I mean, it was completely, totally, utterly unnecessary. And I had it in the second half of the summer, which seemed to be worse because I know we've had a heat wave and everything lately, but it was like all August of 1988, and there was like a heat wave the entire month. It was like July and August. It was awful, 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 awful. Okay. So I get it. I get it. Okay. It was terrible. I used to actually sleep in my car sometimes. Okay. It was terrible, okay? Right there with you, right? But this is what you signed up for. This is what you signed up for. Okay? So that means everything moves faster than it does on a than the typical spring and fall timetable. Okay? Assignments happen on much more rapid, they're assigned on a much more rapid pace. Okay? You have to actually watch these videos and do the reading, okay, in a more rapid pace than you would in my fall and spring classes. Okay? You have to catch up. Okay? Now, I probably could have done more, I'm sure, to actually teach you on the Megalomania assignments and maybe even the student reaction story. I'm sure. Okay. I was actually quite pleased with the first two assignments and how they went, but I've seen a real falling off of the shelf from this. Okay. And as I wrote here in my notes here, like, I mean, I've tried to help by even like giving away hints in my videos and everything, which by the way, some of your fellow students have recommended that to me. Okay. So don't think that like this is, he's just crapping on the students. He doesn't like students. That's not true. I love the students. Okay. But students, I've had students who have actually told me, like the ones who actually, I have to admit, the ones who usually get like the A's and the B pluses, they'll say to me like, you want to wake the students up, give them like an assignment, and tell them what the answer is in the middle of the video, and then like maybe they'll start watching the video. And by the way, I've been doing that and everything, and I haven't been getting that. Okay, because it's quite obvious that people aren't watching these videos or doing the reading. Okay, so anyway, this Bronson story is a breaking news story. Okay, it's a breaking news story. That's why I made it whatever it was. It was supposed to be. I delayed the deadline to June 20th, but I made it June 17th originally because it was supposed to be. The idea was that it was breaking that day. You were supposed to hand it to me, and I figured most people probably handed it to me the day it was due. Okay, I gave a 3-day extension to try to help explain what I was looking for and that sort of thing. Okay, so all right, all right. So that's my spiel about that. I hope, I know this is the last day that the feature assignment is due, so I hope that we're actually up to speed on that because we weren't before. Let me just see if there's actually something else here. Actually, yeah, it's actually something else. All right, and we also have the major assignment proposal due, and if those proposals aren't in on time, they'll be getting a grade lower on the major assignment. Okay. If you have any kind of issue, you really need to communicate with me. You really do. Okay. Like I said, I've had people who just kind of just kind of gone ghost, just disappeared. I'm not sure what's going on. I've sent even emails with the exclamation point, really demanding that you read and nothing. Okay. So I understand the confusion about the outline I gave, but then I talked about it in my last video or two. I've talked about how now, I mean, when you're dealing with most stories, it's usually just transition, 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 fact, 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 point, 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 point. Okay, that's what we need. Okay, for this megalomania assignment. And for the feature assignment, similar to the tuition reaction assignment, we need anecdotes. Okay, I described in my last video how to handle that. So we need the anecdotal lead that's focused on the single person. Okay, let me call that up again. Actually, again, the first lead, the first part of the story should start off with something like a John Brown, a name. John Brown was looking out the window. Focus on one person at a time so you can get more depth. Not like 10 people looking out the window. See, John Brown was looking out the window and saw steam. And you kind of leave people thinking, and what could that be? What could that mean? That sort of thing. You leave people on the edge a little bit. Brown thought something was on fire. Actually, he said it was the heat. So yeah, it's a little bit suspenseful. One piece at a time. I really can't take it anymore. And this is how we take care of what really can't take it anymore. It's too damn hot. This is a direct quote, okay? Something that shows emotion, Okay, this is how you should start your feature story. Okay, then you get to the nut graph. Okay, and the nut graph should kind of like maybe dovetail in what was already said, but then sum up like a lead, the lead would, what the whole story is about. Brown is among many students who are frustrated by the heat this summer, and they're having a lot of difficulty dealing with classes or whatever. It doesn't have to necessarily be students. I think I made it broader than that. And, maybe like having to go to work or whatever, All right. So that's what should be at the top, something like that. And then you go back into the transitions, the anecdotes, and then the quotes. Okay. Um. All right. So that feature story is due on Monday. The Megalomania rewrite, I hope that's going to be good because now I've talked about it for several videos now. And I've given away a lot more than I typically given away in terms of answers and stuff like that. That's due on Thursday. Okay. Your major assignment proposal is due on Monday. Okay. So I see that a bunch are in now. I'm looking at this over the weekend. Okay. That's good. All right. I'm going to talk about that a bit today. Okay. Um, now again, I've talked about this before, but again, this idea, I actually did post this over the weekend. This idea is supposed to be basically something that, you know, like an idea of your choice, but the idea is that you're going to actually, it's a little more complicated than maybe like the weather or something like that. But at the same time, it actually should still have like some sort of simplistic approach to it. Something that maybe is like not a major investigation, but like maybe a reaction, that sort of thing. Okay. Um, This is Ananias right here. Okay. I want to see how I think she meant to say how accommodated Rutgers students feel by their professors. If they reach out to them, it doesn't have to be this long. It's very good that she wrote this long. I appreciate it. She helps justify it and everything like you would with any kind of presentation. That's I appreciate it. I'm just really looking for a line right here. And you know what? This is actually a good story. Okay. It's a little more complicated in the weather, and it has more shades of gray, different perspectives and everything, which demand like a longer writing. Okay. So this one basically says how to there's so many words, says this is a reaction story. This is how Rutgers students feel about their professors. Do they teach well? Do they do well? Do they listen to them when they have issues? Do they help them off hours? Do they help them on hours? Are they clear? Are they like, you know, can you like, understand, interpret what's being said in class, that sort of thing. So many different shades of gray there that different perspectives you can take from. All basically you can divide into your story by transition, okay? And have anecdotes, have somebody talk about, what, maybe like if they have mixed opinions about it, have them talk about like one experience in class. This is an anecdote where they're basically like, let's go to John Brown again. Others say professors teach to their research. I've heard this complaint before, and not to the students. Okay, that'd be like a good transition right there. Okay, let's go back to John Brown. Here's your anecdote. Okay, John Brown said he sits in, I don't know, Scott Hall 123 and has to restrain himself from sleeping. See, we're getting personal, a personal experience. We're not embarrassing anybody here or anything like that. From sleeping because the professor um, talks constantly and takes no questions from students. And notice there's nothing in direct quotes here. Just straightforward talk. Okay. The class has 500 people. Yeah, Scott Hall 123 is huge. And the professor ignores any hands that go up, he said. All right. There you go. Okay. That's like an anecdote. Okay. It is the most boring class alive. Then you show the humanization with the direct quote, okay? And that's supposed to be 800 to 1100 words, okay? So again, it's what's timely, what's manageable, keeping it simple at the same time, even though it's a little more complex. I say a little more, it doesn't mean it's a complex topic. I'm saying it's a little more complex than we've been dealing with, okay? Remember, there's no rewrite, and I'm posting this out there now and talking about this now so you guys can get started on this and get this done because you have less than 2 weeks to do it, okay? You got more time than you do on a typical assignment, okay? But July 5th is a week from Friday, okay? So you send in something to me that basically will beforehand, like you would this again we would typically do on like a project oriented story is we kind of do a lot of upfront work, front load what's being done, try to get things all straightened out before it's actually submitted, okay? Because you got time, the benefit of time, actually work and fix the story, okay? And before actually submitting it, as opposed to a breaking news story when you have to do all that when you actually submit it, okay? All right. So what I do is I have a clip right here. I'm actually going to show that clip right now. And what that clip will do, it will talk about how I handle the major assignment. Now, another thing you could do if you need like any kind of help with getting a hold of people because this is an online class, if you want me to put up a discussion point or something like that, like we've been doing with the weather stories and that sort of thing, please let me know and I'll do so. Okay. Um, if that helps, I mean, I'll just try to get people to contribute and don't forget, that's also class participation, okay? Um, let's see here. Okay. Just give me a second here. All right. All right, so let me just give me a second here. So what I want people to do basically is to if you want to, to basically participate and be involved in that sort of thing. So so if you want, that's actually another way of being involved is not just reacting to the discussion point, but also just like asking to have one put up to help basically, provide some content for your story and that sort of thing. Okay. Um, now let me show you, I actually do a little demonstration here. And again, like sometimes my talking can be a little bit clumsy on these demonstrations, but I do a little demonstration and basically how to handle this story. Okay. So let's go to that. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll shrink myself up here. So you can see me in this other thing. Yeah. I don't know what happened to me. Okay, here it comes. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Bit about the major assignment. Interesting thing about this is that, and let me go to that a bit. Let me actually stop share first. Is that again, this kind of story is like I'm not necessarily looking for feature story. I'm not looking for really anything. Actually, this is really the story where you really got to like be like your own self manager. Something I talk about all the time in digital media, where you got to basically really kind of like think for yourself here and like come up with your own structure. I may have said this in the past. I just want to change one thing. You can use an anecdotal lead if you want. That's fine. But I want to make sure that actually like people understand that this is not supposed to be like a research paper. Okay, this is still a news story. I've seen a couple of examples that people have sent through where you felt like you needed to have again like a really long kind of like beginning or preamble to it. Um, just so you know, this is actually the week where you actually really start like developing rough drafts and like showing me that. And giving you guys assignments to do, and you want to have the weather assignment rewrite done, but this is actually just the last week, so we really got to like get going on this. Okay. And I mean, you gave me the ideas. You gave me good ideas. I think I've approved everybody's idea. A couple of you wanted to actually change. That's fine too, as long as you get it done. I think right now it might be a little bit late to change at this point, because you got a week to do. But again, I'm not looking necessarily for like the major research paper here. Okay. Not trying to make an example of anybody. I actually really appreciate the fact that this student actually sent me his rough draft early. But one thing I want you guys again to avoid is the research paperese. That I tend to think. I mean, this is a news story. Okay, it's a news story. It's just longer, 800 to 1,000 plus words. That's it. Okay, so basically, it's twice as long as what you're typically be doing. And again, don't forget that the weather assignment counts twice as much as the previous assignments did, and then this is going to count 4 times as much. So you really got to make sure that you get it right, and you really want to make sure that you get it to me so I can see it. But what you really got to do though is also remember that we're sticking with the same line here, and that is that we're still writing news stories here. Like this story right here had an incredibly long beginning. Okay, this is just a rough draft. It was sitting a while ago, which I appreciate. Actually, the second draft was much better. So this year, the summer class to Rutgers. This is actually a story about how essentially the summer class changes. Summer class schedule changes like all the time or something like that, and it kind of throws people off kilter and that sort of thing. But this actually is not like the data journalism assignment. This actually is essentially what I call them a reaction story. Okay, this if I really wanted to drive you crazy and have you hate going to Rutgers and everything, I would have you do like a full complete story where you would have to interview like administrators and officials and into all their decision making and everything. But that would be like a really long story and require a lot of research that you don't have the time to do. Okay, I'm sorry, you don't. Okay, so what I'm actually looking to do is actually just do a story that is very specific, and then the specific is essentially the students reacting to the changes in the scheduling. Okay, that's a good story, and it can get a voice out there that is specific, and also maybe get to the administration themselves. Ideally, I would like to maybe get some administration reaction to respond to the students in the story, but this is much more simple and much better within our time constraints, just to work as a reaction story, students reacting to this. Okay. This year's summer classes for Rutgers students will not be as flexible as they were private year. Well, first of all, that's actually a little bit of an opinionated statement there. The change in how summer classes are being presented is because Rutgers has begun to open up the school since it's kind of going into all this explanation about why they're doing it, which I don't really need. It's also coming, is that from the administration? I don't know. There's a lot of setup here. The pandemic coming down, most students will be in person this year. The schedule, the reaction. Now we finally get to the story. This is where the story is right here. Now, this is not an anecdotal lead, okay, that I'm looking for. An anecdotal lead would be, again, focusing on somebody's specific crisis involving the summer class scheduling. But, instead, if there's just a lot of setup about why the university is doing this, but we're not getting to the story, which is right here, okay? Which is what I asked them to do. The reaction from students to the release of summer classes schedule has been met with dissatisfaction. A little bit of a passive voice statement. Most students say, "Oh, that's another cardinal sin." No first person. Just say many students believe it is better for summer class to be online than in person. It could be the first transition right there. Now we get into like another point, flexibility. There's just like tons of setup before we even get to like an individual student. Okay. And no, that's not how we're doing it. I mean, if you want to get to 800 words, you don't do it by padding. You don't do it by like just going to the whole explanation about how summer classes work. This before we even get to a student, it's how many words? It's 176 words. So it's almost 200 words before we even get to like a student. Okay, and this is actually about students and the reaction. If you want to get it to 800 words, just interview more students. Interview 7, 8. And then you'll get their individual experiences. That's all. You have to get more substance as opposed to more style. Okay, more reporting. That's all. and I said this to you guys, I think earlier in the semester, and that is, again, like, if you ever do go into this field, you ever get asked the question, are you a better reporter than a writer? Okay. You always want to say reporter, because the substance is what carries the day. That Guy Talese story I showed you before was a feature story, very stylistic, the whole thing. But he actually worked to get that information. There was substance in that story. It wasn't just style. He actually basically, like, not stalked, but basically, like, he couldn't interview Frank Sinatra, first of all. He had to basically interview everybody around him. So that requires work. That means interviewing, getting people, getting information from people, as much information you can from people, to paint pictures within the whole story. To paint scenes, to tell anecdotes, that sort of thing. And you just build that into a larger story. Okay. So then, the rest of the story actually does deal with the students and their reactions. Okay. Which is good. Okay. But it didn't need all that setup. Okay. All right. Let me get out of here. So anyway, let me go into some of your ideas that you guys had, to show how this can be approached. Those of you who live, I guess, China right now, a bunch of you actually talked about this accident, I guess, that had happened, and involving a plane. I guess it was in China. I guess that's horrible. I'm very sorry to hear that. Oh, and I'm on the wrong spot. And I just wanted to basically say that, like, that's a fine. It's horrible tragedy, but I mean, it's a good story to do. But what I suggested was actually, like, just basically, just sticking with the, maybe like the reaction or the impact that this has had on people. Okay.
We can't save you from getting tagged in a wipeout video, but we can save you.
So in case you're wondering, like, why, oh my God, what happened there? I had to change locations because the cord was over here and I was running out of battery. So, so there was it. That, boy, asynchronous running, right? All right. So, let me actually talk about that. Anyway, so there was this idea that actually approved a bunch of people lived in China that had this idea right about the plane crash. And I basically said that, okay, so again, like, you don't necessarily want to write about the plane crash happened. You want to get into maybe the nitty gritty of that, investigative piece, that sort of thing. Everything about journalism. Why am I asking people to, like, shy away from that? I mean, it's not like I'm trying to teach people how to be, like, shy away from storage or something. I'm trying to teach people how, like, to do things that they're able to do. To understand, first of all, the importance of, like, following instructions. Second of all is the importance of time management. And third of all is basically not overshooting or undershooting. Okay, basically knowing what you can do within the time frame allowed. Because one thing you're going to notice if you do stick with journalism classes is that it's going to be a lot more about actual, again, self-management, coming up with your own ideas. And when you come up with your own ideas, you got to be able to understand, well, you got to do what you can only do. Okay. This section was from John Wynn. My topic of this assignment is the air crash that happened on March 23rd, 2022 in China. It caused, it's off, 132 people died. God. There are thousands of airplanes that fly every day. It's important transportation, blah, blah, blah. So what I said was, this can work, but you got to make this about today. What is the latest? Who's reacting? But really, it's about this: who is reacting. Okay. So what I suggested to everybody was basically just this: that you should just get reaction from people that basically, like, might feel personally affected by this. I mean, it's not been. Maybe I'm off kilter or something, but I'm old enough to remember when, like, plane crashes like this, unfortunately, happened to seem like every other month. And I like to think that air travel has actually improved a lot since then. And I mean, a lot of people are afraid to go up in the sky, but now, I mean, you haven't really heard about this kind of thing, and it does happen. It's, like, so shocking. So what I would like to see is, like, and actually I'm just gonna use my little whiteboard here, okay? You know, basically you would have a lead that would basically address obviously the China plane crash, but it's not necessarily about, you know, think about the sliver of the angle you got to go with here. It's not about the China plane crash itself, but, you know, maybe like you focus on one specific group. Maybe it's like people in whatever town are still feeling upset about, that's still, are still shocked even, are still the plane crash that killed 22 people in China. I mean, you're going to submit this story on May 2nd, so we'll just say March, okay? I mean, something as simple as that, you know. Just, I mean, I would have to think that if there was something that happened, let's say, even in California, which is 3,000 miles from me, there's a plane crash like that, I would think I could find 8 people in New Jersey, which is 3,000 miles away, who would still be upset about this because it happens so infrequently and it's so shocking and it kind of raises things. It raises questions, not just among like transportation officials or people like that, but you know, the people want to know, am I able to fly safely? You know, a lot of people are like worried now going up in the air because now they just got rid of the mask mandate, basically. And I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that because I guess the Biden administration here is going to try to reimpose it. But, you know, a lot of people are just afraid to go up in the air because they're afraid of getting COVID. But to add this, I mean, actually, I have to be honest with you. You might even be able to get 8 people in New Jersey to react to this China crash because to hear about this happening ever it's again, when I, like back in the 70s and 1980s, it was so much more common. It's horrible that, but happen now, even anywhere. It's like, wow, you know, I would probably react to that. You know, like God, what's going on here? How did it happen? You know, so I mean, so we're already dealing with the crisis in the skies of people like fearing about getting sick, but also be worried about like maybe a plane actually like falling out of the sky. It's horrible. Something like that happened around 9/11. It was actually a plane that crashed like probably a couple weeks after 9/11, I think it was. It crashed in the Rockaways in New York City. It was horrible. And again, that raised the whole question of, again, terrorism. So that's another thing that's obviously been on people's minds for a very long time. Is that an issue? I don't know. Obviously, this story, Bobby, would include some background, but not too much. You want to get people familiar with what happened, but you have to kind of make that as like a secondary information. It's more about the people reacting. So you know, I don't know. I'm just gonna John Brown. You know, you need, or actually, I'm sorry, you get a transition. Say some people say they're worried about the safety of air travel. So again, it's all about the reaction and what's going through people's minds right now. You know, so you break this into transitions. John Brown said he hasn't heard of a tragedy like this in a while. He's wondering if it's safe to fly anymore. And maybe like into his own personal experience, you know, Brown uses air travel for his job. Now he's thinking, I don't know, about using a car service or something, or a bus. See, anecdotal information. See, and then what you do is just kind of pile these together. This is just like every other story we've been doing, right? Just that it's longer. And we go one person at a time, you know, and then maybe a quote. You know? And then we use another transition. Maybe we use the one I just used, okay? Others say, you know, they already have to about the safety, their health safety. This would be in America, I guess. Now that the mask mandate
has been eliminated for the time being. This just compounds problem, they say. See another transition, right? And then you basically have Fred Jones said he's I'm gonna say something, he's just going to inflate planes altogether. Of course, this could also be a mixed reaction story. Others say that while the incident was horrible, this, plane travel is still the safest kind of transportation. And Peters said, she feels completely safe while in a plane, and then maybe like she'll put on a movie to relieve her jitters. That's what helps me always. I still feel that way, like in the plane. Okay, so you can see again, we're going in the whole same pattern, right? We've got lead, transition, okay, negative, and quote, and then transition, anecdote, oops, okay, voila, right there. Okay, so it basically follows the same pattern we followed before. Okay, now again, if you wanted to do something like maybe an anecdotal lead, I'm going to go back into the assignment, make sure that like I think I had a line in there basically saying that like no, just straight leads. I'm going to change that. Okay, but anecdotal lead would be fine if you want to do something like that. You want to just take like an anecdote, you take it, from here. You would take it maybe from something you would normally put in the middle of the story, and maybe put it at the top, and then basically, then you would have something like, this would become a nut graph. Jones was among many still shocked by the plane crash, and it's made them rethink. Of course, there's about a couple of opinions here, but whatever. The whole transportation, whatever. We're using all there. Okay. So this would be like so either Fred Jones said he's going to go, he's just going to avoid planes altogether after then you want to point a little context here, after the China plane. Actually, I moved up an anecdote here. I'm sorry, transition. Altogether, he was already, he will apply a little more. He was already worried going up in a plane, getting all the descriptions, sweating as he holds the handles, the armrest of the plane and takes off. Okay, so then you got these teases up here, and then you go into a nut graph. Okay. All right, so that's that story. So again, we're kind of following the same pattern we've done before. Just again, it's just long. If you want more information, interview more people. That's it. Or maybe you just get deeper information from people. You have them tell more of their story. Okay.
Okay. So now the real me is back. And all right, so yeah, I spent a lot of time kind of lecturing about, oh yeah, we really got to get into shape here. It's not too late. But want to make sure that we also got our lessons across as far as like what's due, Just really have to like kind of, I don't know, organize ourselves and really like try to watch what's being taught, what you're being assigned here to read and that sort of thing. I went over all the chapters we were assigned to read. So 8 and 12 for the last ones, they dealt with the feature story. So yes, let's please try to catch up here. Um, okay. If you need any help with anything, you can always just reach out. We can have office hours. I fully expect these Megalomania rewrites to be fine and perhaps even like see a bunch of A's. Okay. So that would be great. Okay. So let's work toward that. If you want me to look at again at a draft ahead of time before you submit it, that's fine. Okay. Thanks very much, and I will talk to you.